Welcome to What's Possible, Next Level Thinking with World-Class Coaches. I am so looking forward to this conversation with my friend and SBC coach, Stella Grisant. And I'm going to tell you her professional stuff in a minute. Actually, I'll tell you that first, and then I'm going to tell you what I think is awesome about her. Mm-hmm. So to begin with, Stella does have her master's in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. She does so much work in this space of well-being and how to help us show up better in life and work. And she actually is writing a book right now, so I'm sure we'll get into that during our conversation. The book is called Work Happiness Method, and there's a longer subtitle that she'll go through with you as well. And the Work Happiness Method, she also has a course on it, and she took that course and has created a book out of the content, and it being wildly successful. She thought, how can we get this in more hands? So I cannot wait to read her book. On a personal level, where I first came across Stella, besides watching a bunch of videos of Stella, and I knew she was part of the SBC team, when we shut down for COVID at the very beginning and quarantine, Stella put out a request to all the coaches, and she wanted to create what she called the Hero Hotline. And it was a passion, a heartfelt project to bring coaches together to support those who are working the front lines. And that to me showed who she is as a human. And so there's so many people doing a lot of work out there, but when you operate purely from the heart, there's something so beautiful. And so Stella gathered, it felt like 100 people on the calls. I don't know. She's shaking her head. So I think it was at least 100 coaches to offer their support to anybody who needed it, and created a really beautiful opportunity for those who are struggling during the most difficult of times. So that's my first real introduction to Stella. And since then, I've loved getting to know her even more. So with that, welcome, Stella.
You've made me a little teary, and we haven't even started. That is like the warmest intro. Thank you so much. I'm already like teary, and yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
And thank you for showing up and being willing to help and volunteer and support. That was such a beautiful. I loved meeting you through that, and that was a hard time, but it was so beautiful to see people rally.
Yeah. Well, even as you say that, it made me think your initial intent, I'm assuming, was really to serve others, but in fact, it also allowed us to have community. Those of us who were, kind of thinking, how can we help? What can we do? And you're isolated at home, even as coaches, we were all in that space, and you gave us an opportunity to have this new, wonderful community of people who wanted to help. So on so many levels, it was a powerful project. So
well, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, when I asked you what topic you wanted to talk about, we had a few different options. And then when you said, how about boundaries? Like the lights went off in my head, because that is a topic I am so passionate about for my clients, for me personally, for family members. And I thought, yes, let's do it. We need more boundaries. Before we start, though, everybody has different definitions. So if you can take a moment to define, when you say boundaries, what does that look like?
Oh, I love this question. I'm so grateful we get to talk about this, because this is where I'm actually writing the boundaries chapter in my book right now. And so I'm so excited to talk things through. I define boundaries as an agreement that you make with yourself to help you express your values and be who you want to be with more ease. And I've thought a lot about the word agreement, and I just seen in myself, the reason why I say it's an agreement you make with yourself is because boundaries arise because we have conflicting desires. We want to volunteer for all the things, but then we also feel so tired, right? We want to be there for our kids, but then we also need me time. Right? There's so many conflicting desires all the time. And so I see boundaries as, a conscious agreement that you make with yourself on what's important. and what will enable you to feel more free and like yourself. Because we can live our values with like 100-pound backpack, like going uphill, or we can have one of those fancy suitcases and like glide through the airport. And so boundaries help us just be who we want to be with more ease. Even though ironically, I find the setting of boundaries extremely uncomfortable, ultimately they lead to what I think is, a greater comfort and ease.
Yeah, I want to go back to that point of the setting of them being such a challenge in one moment, but I love that it's an agreement you make with yourself. It's honoring that you have needs. I think so often, particularly as women, as moms, we're often just pulled in so many directions, and boundaries are something for everyone, obviously. So I don't want to imply that it's not, but we have so many people pulling at us, or you get to now I'm at later life where I have parents who are later life. So my kids are independent and doing well, but then now I have, parents in my life. And so there's so many people you want to serve. And so to make that agreement with yourself so that you can show up in a way that's consistent with who you want to be and how you want to be.
Exactly.
I love that. Can you dial back into what makes it difficult? I'm curious what you think about that.
Ooh, well, for me, I like to say I'm a recovering people pleaser. It's a process. It's, I think, going to be a lifelong journey. But I think that, wait, sorry, what was the question? We have construction going on and I'm hearing yelling, and that totally took me out of the moment.
Okay, we got boundaries from the
brain live.
So what makes it so hard?
Okay. Okay, because this is like a big answer. What makes it so hard, I think, is that this is wiring that happened from childhood for me. And this is what I've deduced from years and years of therapy, is that I had a really difficult childhood in that my father died when I was 6 from lung cancer. And so kind of what I've pieced together, this might not be the story. This is just the story that makes sense to me now, but it could not be it. But I think that it was hard. I saw my mom struggle. My parents are like immigrants. They just came to the country. They're like setting up their lives. Now my dad died. So my mom has a lot on her plate. And I think, to maintain attachment as a child, I kind of learned that I needed to repress my own needs and kind of be good and keep things peaceful. So I think as a society, though, that happens regardless of trauma to a lot of children, because we don't let children have their feelings. Generally, as a society, we tell them it's, smile, don't cry. This is like a big thing. So I think a lot of us grow up repressing our own feelings and needs without even knowing it. And then we grow up into adults who are used to just making sure everyone's okay. And it's hard because, in a way, I think I've been wired to think that my way to love and safety and peace and even success is to make sure everyone else is okay. And so it feels wrong in my body almost. And I feel so much guilt when I'm creating a boundary that might potentially be disappointing to someone. And so now I can watch that and see that happening, and I'm aware of that, and I know the right choice to make, but it doesn't mean that it's guilt-free. And I've just accepted it, and I've found ways to cope with the guilt, and I'm retraining my nervous system in a way to be able to be more comfortable with the practice. But I think it's, for a lot of people, it just will feel wrong. And I tell my clients, it feels wrong, but it's not because it is wrong. It's because it's different. And because it's different, we have to kind of tell our nervous system in the part that's like panicking that it's okay and it's safe, and almost prove to that kind of part, that child, whoever that, that part of you that's kind of this is wrong, kind of prove to like, see, they're okay. I was able to go out on vacation without checking my emails. They survived, right? Like they still like me. So I think it's hard. And I think there is risk when you set boundaries, right? Like you could disappoint someone. Someone might feel insulted. It's change. Like if you're answering your emails after 7 p.m. every day, and now you decide you're not going to do that, some people don't like change. So you have to deal with that. And that's not always comfortable.
Yeah. What I really appreciate that you're saying, and I think we forget this, is the imprinting that happens at such a young age. And whether it's an experience like you had to deal with it, 6 years old, which is so painful, and immediately you go into coping and how can I show up in a way that supports everybody around me? Or even if it's not something as traumatic as that, there's just messages. It could be on the playground with friends and you want to play with this friend and you're having boundaries around that, and you're, in elementary school, but that moment of how your other friends treated you after that incident, all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, I need to please them too. It can happen anywhere in a simple situation, but these add up in our brain and they start to be moments that then bring us to where we are today. And then we have a knee-jerk reaction of boundaries are bad and people won't like me, or this is what happens when I set them. And what I love that you talked about, and I know you said years of therapy, and in therapy, they talk about this a lot, is talking back to your thoughts. So checking in, what am I thinking right now as I try to set a boundary, and how can I correct that thought or give different facts to my brain to digest so I can show up differently this time.
Yeah. And that's hard. That's hard to slow down, to catch yourself in that moment, to shift gears in a heated moment. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy when you're like wired a certain way. And so that's why I tell myself and my clients that you have your whole life to master this. And each moment is like a learning experience, right? Growth mindset. I'm like, okay, let me try this on. Let me practice. Let me see how it goes. And then I give myself a little pat on the back, like, good job. Like you delegated that, even though you just wanted to take it on, and, good job.
Well done. Well, and I think the other thing that when I'm working with clients, or even thinking about myself when I need to set a boundary, is what's good about this? What's right about this? And we often think of the downside of things, or the downside of whether it's change in how we show up. So what's good about setting a boundary of I'm not going to check emails after 5? Well, what's good is I'm refreshed the next day and I can serve people better. I can be a better, mom to my kids, a partner to my partner, whatever it is in your life. There tends to be a silver lining or a gold lining on the other side when you do set those boundaries, and putting our attention there versus the potential loss.
Yes, totally. Right. And I was giving a webinar on this yesterday, and this is like a popular training that I'm doing now, because I think all of us feel like we need boundaries post-pandemic even more. And a new thought that just kind of came in, I was like, well, I think a lot of reason why we tend to focus on what we're trying to keep out or trying to stop, or the pain of it, is because of that negativity bias that we have. Mm-hmm. So we tend to focus on the loss more than the potential gains, right? And that loss aversion, like we hate losing something more than we love winning or gaining. Yeah. And so the thought of like potentially like losing favor with someone or changing the way something's going, and that feeling of loss feels so much more painful than, oh my God, like I'll have so much more freedom and time and well-being. Like we kind of like just discount that.
Exactly.
And it's really like, that's why it has to be like, it's like slowing down and being conscious and not letting yourself be driven by that is work.
Yeah, it is work. And I also think, curious your thoughts on this and if you're addressing it in your book. I think there's also a negative connotation with the word boundaries. I've had several people, it was funny, in the course of 1 week, I had 2 coaches and a friend say to me, Eileen, you have such good boundaries. And my immediate reaction was, oh, is that, is that, are you saying that because it's good? Or are you saying it because I wish that you would, say yes to all these things? And for me, I do practice really strong boundaries because I have my work. I want to make sure that I, dedicate the time and show up in the way that I can in the best way possible for my work. I have my kids, I have, my partner, and I have my parents, my, elder care too. And so my life has a lot of very demanding pieces, as do most people's. And if I don't have clear boundaries, there is no possible way I can show up as my best self. However, I feel comfortable with that, but there is that kind of boundaries can really have that. Like, is it something that we celebrate, or is it something that we think, oh, Stella has really strong boundaries?
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like there's a stigma to it. Like, like a, I'm really trying to because I see how much they can help me and how much they are helping me, because I think the lack of boundaries really is kind of could cut off my growth. I'm so embracing them that I'm like reclaiming it. It's kind of like, and I think a lot of people are reclaiming it. I think that's why it's become such a popular topic, but there is a stigma to it. Like, and I think that's because as women, we're expected to please everyone and make sure everyone's happy. And then like, oh, she has boundaries. Like, she's a bee.
Right.
She's, look at her taking her time for self-care. Like, so, I understand that. I can understand that. And I think that's why boundaries are so hard too. So it's about like embracing and reclaiming, and it's a lot of rewiring that's happening.
And being strong in knowing that it is the way that you can take care of yourself and others. It's a gift to yourself. I'm going back to, I love what you said. It's an agreement with yourself, and it's also a gift with yourself and to others. And there's one thing I was thinking also with boundaries, which I talk a lot with clients about, and it makes me think, you and I were in a coach meeting not too long ago where we got into the whole conversation about values and being super clear on your values, identifying those top 2 values. It's funny. I was on a call with a client the other day, and she said, I can't just pick 2 values, and it's hard to bubble up the key ones that you really want to focus on. But it is a critical component in this boundary setting and being able. I always use a filter as kind of the visual image for clients. And I said, you need to think about what you want to filter in, allow into your life, and what's the stuff that you're going to keep out. And to do that, you've got to understand your boundaries, what's important to you, and what is it that I want to allow in? Because if we don't know that, it's very hard to have boundaries. And so I'm curious, how do you work with people around that, or what are you writing about in that space for how to do it?
Yeah. So in my program, in the Work Happiness Method, and then like I'm taking it to another, expanding on it in the book, we always start with what's a feeling or a value that you want to cultivate more of in your life. So is it vitality, peacefulness, feeling organized, feeling respected, appreciated? Like, what is that feeling? What's that yes that you want to experience more of? Because I think you're right. It's like, it's not just about, when people think about boundaries, they think about, what am I trying to keep out? And I'm like, actually, like, what are you trying to keep in and expand on?
Exactly. Same. Right? Yes.
So same thing. And so
I love it.
So I have them start with like, what do you want to expand on? Okay. So I always give the example of like, for me, vitality is my top value. And so I'm like trying to exercise more. And so then I'm like, okay, well, then what are the boundaries I need to create so that I can have that space to exercise more? No meetings before 9, husband feeding daughter breakfast in the morning, having the yoga mat like in my living room ready to go. Like those are all examples of boundaries I created to enable me to be who I want to be. So I totally agree with you that it's I always start with what is it that you want to cultivate? Who is it that you want to be? How is it that you want to feel? And then we consider, well, how do I create a space to support that and expand that? And that boundaries are, for me, more about that than just keeping out the stuff random.
I so agree. And I think when you can shift your mind to look at it from that angle, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, that makes boundaries exciting. Yeah. And I love your example of setting yourself up for success. It's, if I want this must be in place for me to be able to do that each day. And I know your life with being a mom of young kids and having a thriving business and writing a book and being a partner, you have all of that in your life. You have to have those kind of, and even habits, I was going to say habits in place and structure in place that allows you to have that space to take care of you too.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And sometimes I do it better than other times, but yeah.
Don't we all? So do you have any story you might be able to share, possibly one from your book or just a client story of someone who really struggled with boundaries, but was able to start using boundaries in a way that benefited them, and kind of how they got there? That how piece is where I really love dialing in, because some of our listeners might be thinking, I love this idea, but I still don't know how to do it.
Yeah. So, God, so many stories come to mind. A recent client of mine, who's a director at her company, a tech company, we first did her vision and her values. And then one of her top values was to be there for her children to be there for her children, to be a presence in her children's lives, just to have that quality time with them. And one of the ways that she executes on that value is picking them up from school, starting a Girl Scouts chapter in her new community. So like that was her, she's like, that's what will help me feel like I'm really expressing this top value. But meanwhile, she was like working all hours. She was just nonstop. And she felt so much pressure on herself. And so we really kind of started tracking all her activities and tasks and identified what's draining, what's energizing, and what's her role and what's not. Mm-hmm. And so she was very clearly able to see that she was taking on stuff that was not hers, stuff that she could have easily delegated to someone else. In fact, she felt so responsible that she was denying her team members an opportunity to step up. So I see that happen a lot too, is because, especially, I feel like people pleasers, I want to see a study on this. I don't know if you know of any. I feel like people pleasers, perfectionists, there's like a Venn diagram. There has to be like an overlap.
Absolutely.
And so she was just like trying to do it all and trying to do it all well and taking it all on herself. And in her mind, she thought she was being of service and a good leader, but really she was denying her employee a chance to really take on more responsibilities and grow. And that's what he wanted. And that's what he expressed. And so we talked about creating boundaries in her schedule and letting go of the things that were not hers and were also draining. Yeah. And she started to realize she went from like working all hours to being like, I'm kind of done at 3. Don't tell anyone, so she went from like, couldn't breathe to like, I kind of have a lot of time on my hands.
Wow.
It really helped her reframe where she really needed to work. And what was the definition of hard work?
Yeah.
That's another one that I think leaders often, especially new leaders, stumble upon. They think that in order to work hard, they need to be like doing all the things. And as they move on up, they feel more comfortable doing the things they were doing as an individual contributor. And so making that transition for her, like embracing that she didn't have to do those things and have her hands in it, was very freeing. So how do you do it? I would start with just auditing a week of your tasks and really classifying them on energizing, draining. Is it mine? Is it not really? And then taking a look at that and seeing like, what am I willing to let go, delegate, release? What do I want to take on? That could be a nice place to start.
Yeah, I really love that. And I think, again, when she then shows up or we show up after we've done that, then you're getting the best of us. We're more creative, we're more productive, we're more efficient. So it might be fewer hours that we're doing something, but those hours, the quality has just skyrocketed.
Exactly. And that's the ironic thing of like being a people pleaser, is that you want to make everyone happy, but by doing that, you're actually not helping yourself and not really giving that to everyone else, because you're giving them your scraps or your resentment or whatever. But if you set the boundaries and you're energized and you can be your best, everyone wins, I think.
Absolutely. I just did a webinar with Robert Mack, and the whole webinar is on managing your energy. And I always say managing your natural resources and what replenishes and drains. And you're absolutely right. And I think we just keep going and we forget, okay, wait, I need to step back and see what am I doing? And something that depletes us quite possibly might energize someone else. So yeah, absolutely. Oh, I could talk to you all day about this. And I cannot wait for your book to come out. Will you give the full title to our audience right now, just so that they can keep an eye out?
Well, this is the pending title, so it could all change. It's called The Work Happiness Method: How to End the Dread and Fall Back in Love with Your Job. Mm-hmm. And it's all about how to take control over your experience at work, because we all are way more powerful than we may think, and we all have more choices than we may see. And I just want to help people make conscious choices, because I believe that no matter where you go, there you are. And so, with all the great resignation, we see so many people now being like, well, I think I need to quit again. And so that's because our issues follow us. And so I just want to help people be where they are now and maximize it and witness themselves being in control of their experience more. And, if it doesn't work out, then you quit. But ultimately, I think that we could reduce so much turnover, resentment, disengagement if we just learn certain skills, and boundaries being a critical one.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing from that is it's helping people operate within their zone of control. So it's regaining control.
Totally.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, I can't wait for it to come out. All right. Are you ready to play 1, 2, 3 with me?
Yes.
Let's do it. All right. What is one mindset shift that you hope our viewers take away today?
So I think focusing on one thing I encourage my clients to consider is, I'm the kind of person that, and fill in the blank with the behavior or the value that you want to cultivate. So I'm the kind of person that stays calm under pressure, that's creative, organized, so that you are telling yourself the story of who you want to be, because your actions will follow that. And so it kind of is a shift from victim to, this is who I am. Maybe I'm not that way 100% of the time, but I'm the kind of person that takes care of myself. So I'm going to have a green juice and not slam another 3 chocolate chip cookies right now.
Yep. Oh, I love that. It reminds me of that act as if. It's telling yourself who you want to be. Oh, yes. And then show up that way.
Yeah.
Excellent. What are two ideas or facts that you hope people take away from all this goodness that you shared?
Two ideas or facts. I think boundaries are, when we say no, we're really saying yes to something more important. So saying no is saying yes to something more important and being aligned with that greater yes. So taking the time. So I guess the second piece would be like really take the time to get clear on what you want to cultivate for yourself and who you want to be and how you want to feel. And then use that as the starting point for setting your boundaries.
Oh, love that. Saying no equals saying yes. Yes, it allows you to say yes. Oh, such good stuff. All right. What I always like to make sure that these conversations are actionable. So what would you say are three really simple, I'm cautious with the word simple. Sometimes they don't feel as simple, but what would you say are three simple-ish actions that people could take maybe today even to get moving forward with boundaries?
Okay, so I would just practice noticing. I think okay, sorry, this is not so quick, but a lot of times people who struggle with boundaries also struggle with knowing what they need because they're so used to repressing their needs. They're almost like, I don't know what I need. It's things are moving so fast. I didn't know I should say this because like it was just so slowing down. So a foundation to setting healthy boundaries is, I think, mindfulness, slowing down your thoughts enough to catch yourself making decisions. So I would, if you don't already have a mindfulness practice, I know that feels indirect, but it's actually everything to be able to catch your thoughts because that's when you get to reinforce your boundaries. So I would practice some mindfulness and slowing down. The second thing I would do is just practice saying no to something you don't want in the next week. That's how I started one of my clients on setting healthy boundaries. Just one no to something that you don't want. It could be someone brings you the wrong dish at a restaurant. You don't eat it. You just say, sorry, this isn't what I ordered, and you send it back. So just one no. And then a third action around boundaries, I would say is, if someone steps over your boundaries, if someone does something you're not pleased with, or if there's something you can't quite pinpoint, doesn't agree with you, but you don't know the solution, you don't have to wait for it. You could just say, this doesn't feel right. And I want to press pause. This doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know what it is about this, but it's just not right. Let's press pause. Like, this isn't going well. We need to press pause and reevaluate. Wait, can I give you a fourth? Because that reminds me of another one I always
Please.
love.
Yes, please.
So I think for people who like are like an auto yes kind of person, so they, oh yes, I'll do this. Yes, yes. If you can't say no in the moment, I always tell people to delay. So, oh, thank you so much for considering me for this project. Can I take a look at my schedule and get back to you tomorrow or get back to you next week? So that this gives you time to make it a conscious yes or to prepare to say no. So just delay saying yes.
Oh, I love that. And, it's funny. I think about, we all now, walk around with our phones everywhere. And so we have our calendars often on us. I used to love when I'd have my calendar at home and I'd say, I don't have my calendar. So let me get back to you. And so I think we need to start to find ways like you just suggested to basically have that. I don't have my calendar on me. Let me take time to check that because just because we have our calendar in our hand doesn't mean that we can say yes right away or that we have to say yes right away.
Yeah, exactly. So just delay.
Oh, just delay. Hit pause. So much of what you're talking about in terms of all these actions is mindfulness and being present with yourself. Yeah. So I always like to end with the what's in it for me. So what is possible when somebody embraces healthy boundaries?
A longer life. I mean, literally a longer life. We know that repressing your needs chronically can actually lead to disease, and it can actually affect longevity. So, a longer, healthier life.
Oh, Stella, I have chills literally up and down my spine. That is powerful.
Yeah.
By embracing healthy boundaries, it can lead to a longer, healthier, and I'm going to plug in happier.
Happier. Yes.
Stella Grizont, I just love being with you. Thank you so much. We'll do this again. We'll take another chapter of your book.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.